So professionally, so what made you want to be a therapist? Like when did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I actually worked in marketing research for like 8 years. I remember working in doing surveys at this job that I got. It was a temp job or whatever. I didn't know what I was doing. And I went upstairs for an interview and then they hired me. And the next thing you know, I was, operations manager. I did it for years. Made pretty good money, made a life for myself. But I just remember on Mondays, we had staff meetings every Monday, and I would sit in my car in the parking lot and just cry because I did not want to be there. It was just lifeless. I just kind of sat behind a computer all day, blah, blah, blah. Around 2008 when with the economic downturn in 2008, I got laid off. And I remember being so happy that I got laid off, which was weird because that was my whole livelihood. But nonetheless, pretty much the life I built had to kind of come crumbling down because I didn't have any money. So I had bought my first house. I had to move out of it. I went to go live with my sister. I had to, just all kinds of things. And I just remember saying like, how do I want my life to look? And so I kind of started going through this process of reading all these books and looking at magazines like, it was almost like, what do I need to be when I grow up? And so I started doing inventories, like these career things. And I was actually at Georgia State University where I went to. I was a career counselor there during my undergraduate degree. So it was just like a little internship. Right. And I was doing the surveys to help the high schoolers figure out what they wanted to do. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this too at 28. And all of it kept saying stuff like psychologist, counselor, blah, 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 this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that because who's going back to school? And it just so happens I went to my grandmother's house and she was cleaning out our attic. And she brought me all these little assignments, me and my sister. Oh, look at all your assignments from when y'all were a kid. And I was reading through these third grade assignments. What do you want to be when you grow up? A counselor. What do you want to be when you're a psychologist? I want to help people. And so then it was just like, okay, God, fine. and that's really how it came to pass. Started going to Loyola. Loyola is a pastoral counseling program. So it's counseling, but it lets you learn the spiritual aspect of it again. And, till this day, I feel like in its own way, becoming a counselor was a very expensive 5-year-long counseling session for me because I just learned so much. And then I had to break myself all the way down in order to be willing to help others. So I think that it was my calling. It was always my calling. I think I ran away from it, but God will put you where you're supposed to be, whether you do it yourself or he forces you.
So why did you choose this? Like, what did you know that you wanted to be a therapist when you were a teenager? Or like, how did your path begin?
I always tell people I am the result. I think my path began, I'm the result of being in grown folks' business.
I like that.
I'm always in grown folks' business. I'm always wanting to know why. Well, why did he do that? And good and well, I was supposed to hear that as a child. But just being curious about people. So I may not get everybody can solve the mysteries of grown people, but I do get that people are inconsistent. And there are factors that inhibit them from being consistent. So I hear that part of it, and I want to know why. So yeah, the result of being in grown folks' business.
Right. I love that. Personally,
Mm-hmm.
you're a therapist. So
Yes.
I think the biggest part of my movement is encouraging young girls to seek therapy and invested in their mental health early. Just because I feel like I would have benefited so much from starting the healing process way like a decade earlier. So just talk about a teenage girl. She's going through it. Maybe she's suicidal. Maybe she doesn't feel popular. She doesn't fit in. Maybe she's having issues at home. Like, how can therapy, like, what is therapy like for you, and why did you go into this field?
So, from a teenage standpoint, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't seek it. And I know with our generation and our parents, it was more of a get over it type of thing.
Right.
And now I think they're starting to understand the depths of it. But the good news is that these parents now are bringing their kids to therapy. So with not fitting in, with seeing your parents go through a divorce, or you having problems transitioning into a new school, therapy, if nothing else, if you don't want to come spill your guts, it's cool, I get it. But it can be a place for you to vent, if nothing else, for somebody to understand what you're going through. No judgment. You can see me once and you don't ever have to see me again, but please come back, because I gotta live. But
Right.
you're gonna want to come back because you're gonna feel that validation. You're gonna feel that peace that you need. Not everybody has it, but that peace that you need. And I think it could be a significant part of somebody's journey.
Right.
And helping them facilitate direction, their path.
Have you been to therapy? What started your journey into strengthening like your mental health, and what have you learned from it?
Yes, I do see a therapist. I think therapy is amazing. I think it's one of the most, self-reflective things you can do. And it's also something that I try to do as much as possible. So it's almost like a routine where I see my therapist just to talk about what's going on in my life and to share about the things that are going on with me. As a teen, I would definitely have appreciated seeing a therapist because I think as a teen, it's one of the beginning points in my life where I felt that I was trying to understand who I was and the things that I enjoyed, the things that I wanted to stand for, essentially my foundation. So having someone to talk that through with would have been extremely important. I think would have been an amazing thing to have because without that person, I really didn't have anyone. So I kind of did it on my own, and it probably took a lot longer for me to figure out who I was or who I am by not having a therapist than if I had had one. I think I would have been a lot more solid in me as a person.
Yes, I've been to therapy.
So talk about how therapy changed your life, and if you wish that you would have did it sooner.
Therapy changed my life tremendously. The first session, I basically just told her like the reason why I was coming to therapy, and the first thing she told me was she drew a garden, and at the time I was having a lot of problems with my mom and my daughter's father, so she drew their name in one box, my name in one box, and my mother's name in one box, and she drew mine separating everybody, and she said everything that, all their problems is on their garden and all my problems is on mine, and, her father's problems is on his garden, and I should just worry about myself, and I should set boundaries and have control over what I allow into my space. And she also gave me a book called Mindfulness to learn to live in the moment and stop like overthinking things. And yeah, it definitely helped me, because I feel like most of the reason why I didn't care about myself is because I didn't even think about myself. So her giving me that self-awareness to think about me and not to so much worry about everybody else's problems, it made me realize I'm important, I matter.
Right.
So yeah, therapy helped me out a lot.
My mom, she put me in therapy when I was younger, but I wasn't ready to accept it yet. So no matter what therapist she sent me to, I would just be so closed off and just nonchalant about my feelings. Like, I would tell why we're there, but like I wouldn't want to open up or talk to them or anything. And but now that I'm older, I'm working on getting into therapy. It's more so finding the right therapist, which I realize that is important, because you have to have somebody that, you know, connects to your healing in a sense. Like, you can't just have anybody that's there.
I was 10, and you know, I'll say it for what it was. My mother was murdered when I was 10. She was in an abusive relationship with the gentleman that was abusive to me and my sister, abusive to her. And you know, one day he took it too far. The level of that trauma for me was multiplied because I was there when it happened. I saw it. I saw her dead body. I mean, it was just, and there was such a part of me that was numb from that experience. But thinking about it in retrospect, even now, I think to myself, have you seen a 10-year-old lately? And have you seen a 10-year-old as someone that young to have to go through that, the abuse, and seeing it and seeing their parent die or whatever the case is? And so when I moved with my grandmother, I can remember going maybe to one group something or talking to someone, but I remember distinctively acting like everything was okay. And I also remember that it was not something frequent. I did not follow up on it. So here you have, you know, someone who experienced an unspeakable trauma as a child. And again, like, you know, I think a lot of people don't recognize that when children lose parents, it's not just about the loss of the parents, it's the loss of their life. So I didn't stay in the same home. I didn't go to the same school. I had to live in someone else's house. And, you know, even in the house, you know, I was living with my grandmother, my mom's mother. And as a child, there was a part of me that didn't want her to be upset either. So there was a lot of times where I was feeling some kind of way. I kept it in. I can think about, you know, I can honestly say that probably she didn't know how to grieve in front of me. You know, to me, my grandmother was a rock through all of it. So of course I wanted to be a rock too. And then, you know, then there's the other part of you just go back to life. Okay, go back to school, you know, so you experience this thing and everything goes back to usual, but you're not usual anymore. You're not the same. And so I didn't go to therapy. I didn't go to therapy for years. I think that, interestingly enough, what got me in therapy is I was dating someone and they were wearing me out. And I was like, I need to go to therapy to figure out why I keep picking these jerks or whatever the case is. And here I am in therapy I'm going to say I was 28. No, wait a minute, 26 maybe. And 26, and talking about my mother's death for the first time, talking about the abuse I experienced for the first time, talking about all of that for the first time. And that wasn't my intent to talk about it. I wanted to talk about these issues with these guys. Like, wait a minute, how did I get here? But they're all connected. And so you know, for me, I just think about the fact that in retrospect, the level of trauma I experienced, there is no reason I should not have had a space to process that until 30 years later or 15 years later. And so, you know, again, and I keep thinking about advice to give young people with families, people who have kids, all this kind of stuff, is that creating a space for young people to be sad, to go through their emotions, to mourn, to talk to someone is so important, because there was a lot of stuff just emotionally that I carried. And sometimes I couldn't even put together that's where it was from.
Yeah,
Were you a teenager when it happened?
Yeah. I was a teenager. I was 14. But then also when you grow up and you realize that the things that were happening when you were younger, like one thing that like I told my dad that like my mom doesn't know, but like when we went to his girlfriend's house, like she had a daughter and a son, and the daughter would definitely like make me do things to her, and she was older, so like we would sleep in the same bed and things like that, and I would never tell my dad until the son tried to do stuff with me, and that's when I had to tell him, and then my dad ended up leaving that relationship, and then the next girlfriend that he had, her daughter introduced me to drinking. Like, it's certain things that, like, I wish I had my mind. I wish I had my own mind. Like, I wish I used my own mind. I had it. I just didn't use it. So, it's certain things like that that, like, play a part in the fact of all the things that happen. So, like, when the rape happened, I was just like, yo, this really happened? Like, this really happened? Like, and then I felt like I kind of... And then, like, after that, you know, like, he's going to school telling everybody, you know, that we did this and the third, and I'm just some hoe, so I turned into that. I didn't feel like my body wasn't mine no more at that point.
Did you feel like, right.
It's
Literally just talked about this. Like, after I was raped, I felt like I was holding my virginity for so long for this. Now, I felt like, okay, if I say no now, you're just going to do it anyway.
right.
So that's what it turned into.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, okay.
All right. Cool.
Mm-hmm. So what would you tell that girl that has been raped or is in a similar situation that she can take her power back and...
If you've been raped, molested, abused in any way, you have to fight. Because a lot of things are going to go through your mind. You're not going to feel worthy. You're going to feel you might feel disgusting. You might feel worthless, hopeless, weak. All these things you aren't. Because there are plenty of people who, number one, didn't make it through. There are people who still battle with it mentally as an adult, and it affects them, their everyday lives. And you have the chance to be one less of a person that has to deal with it in their adulthood. Stand up for yourself. Tell somebody that you trust. And if somebody doesn't believe you, because I've heard a lot of circumstances where girls tell their moms or something like that and they aren't believed, you need to go to somebody else. Go to a counselor, speak out to somebody to get you some form of help. I'm not saying that you have to tell them exactly who it was, but you have to reach out to somebody. And if you feel comfortable with telling somebody who it is, tell them, so that that feeling that you feel, no other girl will feel from that person. So if you have the courage, if you have the strength, all the strength, because that's a lot to go through, that's a lot to process, and just stand up for yourself and stand up for the girl after you, like I'm standing up for you.
I have about 3 teenage clients.
Have any of them expressed, like, suicide? Like, have you dealt with that? I just want to know the pressures.
So, in their past has, like, had it, but before me. Mm-hmm. So that's never come up in our sessions. But some of the pressures are, like you said, like, keeping up. Mm-hmm. Some have had, traumatic experiences that do, unfortunately, impact the way they see the world and see people. Mm-hmm. So it's a little difficult to maneuver, but even still, they're trying to empower themselves from their story and, create their own life path. Mm-hmm. So I would say that it's a lot of trauma that you and I were not exposed to. Mm-hmm. Growing up,
right?
Because a lot of people make fun. I just had this conversation the other night, the Me Too movement, and right. They were like, "Oh, I don't want to charge," and I was like, that's a little insensitive that you say you don't want to charge, because it doesn't happen like that. I said the problem is people think they're entitled to you,
right?
And that's not okay.
Yeah. And
regarding people's experiences, we live in a world where unfortunately people feel they're entitled to certain things. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they don't think about the impact that has on others. So I think knowing that their experiences, the way they view life. It's a lot to manage. Their parents, teachers, whoever, strangers. Yeah, it's hard.
Right. Now, I didn't go to therapy until I was 32.
Okay.
Like 32. Actually, the first person I told that I was raped in my life.
Wow.
I never told my mom. Because I just felt like I shouldn't have put myself in a situation. I wouldn't even call it rape until I talked to my therapist. Well, I could actually say the words out loud. And I think that a lot of girls might be in a similar situation, or they be at a party, or they feel like, I shouldn't have been here. Like, or they find their own fault and they feel ashamed. So just, from a woman and also from a therapist, like, what advice could you give somebody that's going through like a trauma? Because I feel like if I would have went to therapy way back then,
you would have been in a better place.
Yeah. I could have been healed a long time ago.
I just want them first to know that it is not your fault. It is not your fault. Nothing you could have worn, nothing you could have said. If you were born with no hips, if you were born with hips, breasts, regardless, it is not your fault. You cannot control other people, regardless of what you do, what you wear, what you say. It's not your fault, and you need to know that first. Yeah, it's not your fault.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, what in the world? Like, but I think that every single thing that I encountered in my life is just a part of my story and helped me get to this moment. So that I can, like my pastor was saying, you cannot talk to anybody about faith without having faith. You can't talk about God being a healer if you didn't need healing, or
absolutely.
So, well, I guess both personally and professionally, I didn't tell anybody that I was raped until I talked to you and you helped me to even realize it. And also you went through childhood trauma. So what would you say to the girl that, she's experienced trauma, but she maybe can't, like you didn't tell anybody until you were 20, so talk to anyone about it.
Right, yeah.
So, that she can begin healing earlier. Like she can have a better life, mentally.
Well, I think that one of the things that I definitely want to make sure I go on record for to that young girl. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about, sexual assault. I think the numbers are 1 in every 4 girls is sexually assaulted. I think it's 1 in every 6 young men. So, and I'm talking about underage, right? And the percentage of the perpetrators who do it, it's 95% people that they know. So it's not all the time someone jumping from behind the bushes or what. It's usually someone they know, someone that they went on a date with, a family member. Family members will get it. Clergy, people in the church, babysitters. That's what does it. And so it's to me it's epidemic that this many people have gone through it. I think about the fact that if I sit in a room of women, the better question is to ask who hasn't been touched, who hasn't been sexually assaulted. It's never, but everybody, it's almost like every woman in the room has gone through that, and it's unfathomable, and so it's an epidemic. So I want to say that first. The other part of it too is that a lot of times, because in our society, girls are made to feel shameful about their sexuality, not in the way that boys are. And so I think there's almost a setup that occurs for me to be so ashamed of my body that even if someone takes advantage of me and violates me, there's a shame that I have for something you did to me. And so I think that's important to put out there for anybody, especially young women who this might have happened to. It's not your fault. I don't care if you were with the boy, you get to his house, you get butt naked and you say, stop it. And he still does it, that's his fault. Right. So being very clear that you do not take on the shame if someone takes advantage of you. And I think that that's part of the reason why no one says a lot. But I also think that it's important to note that when something like that happens to someone, it changes you and it puts you again, that's a traumatic experience. And there's a wall that occurs. There's this fight or flight kind of thing that occurs. And so it shows up in every area of your life. I can say for my sexual assault, again, the guy who killed my mother, he used to sexually assault me and my sister. And again, I was 10. I didn't even recognize that was what was happening to me until I get in therapy 20 years later. And I think about, well, actually, as a grown man, he should not have come into my room when I was naked. As a grown man, he should not have, you know, so there's a lot of people who don't even recognize it. So I think that, you know, it's epidemic. It has to be stopped. I think it's the responsibility of us as adults to make sure that we minimize those opportunities and stop making our girls feel ashamed of their bodies and their sexuality. If boys can have it, girls can have it. Because I think if I feel comfortable coming to talk to my parents about this kind of stuff, maybe they might speak up sooner. I know for me, it was just I didn't understand. I was 10 years old. And so again, we have to think about developmental stages. As a 10-year-old, I couldn't even process it. Someone who's a teenager, they might not want to share with their parent because all they're thinking about is that, oh, well, I shouldn't have been over his house anyway, or I would have been ever. And so again, to the parents, are you giving your kids places to be human, to mess up and come to you and all that kind of stuff. So I think that trauma really can change a sexual assault specifically. And I think that is just really important for us as young women to talk to each other, to ask, you know, to the point of just saying, you know, has anybody ever touched you inappropriately? Has anyone ever made you feel uncomfortable, etc.? Again, the stories, I think there's so much power in our stories. If we can just talk about it more.
Right.
You know, there's just such a thing of sexuality is not for us. It's for the men in the room and all this kind of stuff. And it's not. That's very dangerous. So I think that that's one of the most important things that we can do is start early, teaching our kids to be comfortable with their bodies, teaching our kids to be comfortable with communicating with others. But also for anybody who's gone through it, it's never too late to say something. It's never too late to speak up. You know, if you're listening to this tape right now and you're recognizing like, oh crap, I was sexually assaulted. Do not hold that in. Do not pick on yourself about it. Go talk to someone about it so you can heal from it, because you're not going to heal from it until you release it.
Even being a therapist, like, do you feel like you're just like, oh, it might be something they're going through? Do you give people more grace and give yourself less? Like, how is that?
So lately, at first, no. I feel like it switches back and forth, because at first I'm very upset. I'm very expressive, and I'm very, like, I guess I use my powers for evil with that therapist card, because I'm like, you know what, you need to heal, and you have some deep-rooted issues, and da-da-da-da-da, and your inability to love, and I'm like, all right, you gotta chill out. And then I think because I feel bad in that context that I'm like, I try to overcompensate by being like, well, you know, I understand that you gotta work through this, and you know, it's okay, take the time out, da-da-da-da-da. Right. But I will say 30 has taught me, and what I've learned to do is find that balance. Like similar to what I did with my father. Like, yes, you can feel how you want to feel and you can deal with these things, but and at the same time, because I don't want to say but to discount anybody's experience, and at the same time, you can still speak up.
Right.
Yeah. And at the same time, for me, I can still hold you accountable. And at the same time, wrong is wrong.
Right.
You know.
Just the stigma that a lot of Black families have.
Right.
What would you say to that girl that wants to try it? She needs somebody to vent to, but she's getting negative feedback.
I would say still try it. Just be careful of trying methods that we didn't believe in as a culture or maybe in your family you don't believe in therapy for whatever reason, just be careful about using the old methods to support new challenges. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I think in this case, it doesn't work. I think for too long, especially in the Black culture, we have tried to hide the things that have been very destructive to us instead of talking about them, understanding them, and then doing something about it. So mental health is really important. It's a good thing that these days mental health is looked at in a more positive way. I'm hoping that definitely impacts the Black family and just Black culture in general, because I think we have so many challenges in life, especially in America and definitely throughout the world. But in America, I mean, we have so many things that are going on in Black culture and that have been going on for many, many years. We need therapy. We need people to talk to. We need to share our experiences. We need to understand the ramifications of things that have happened in the past and how that impacts us in our present day. You know, it's funny because as a culture, we usually like to look to the past and say, hey, look what happened in the past. Look at our heroes from the past. Look at the awful things that were done in the past to us, and look how it influences us now. The same thing goes for therapy. So, and the same thing goes for families. There are things like that that happen in families that we need to be upfront about, be honest about, and we don't want to make the same mistakes and have these generational curses continue. We want to understand them, we want to deal with them, and we want to end them.
You know, I kind of think about, so if we get really down to biology, okay, there is a doctor that's for OBGYN. You go every year, you check it out, you make sure everything's working. You have a regular doctor that you go in for your annual checkups, da-da-da-da. And my thing is, why, if all these other organs need to be intact, the thing that runs your life, the things that, you know, makes you make the decisions you do, all of that, why would you not treat that with the same level of care? And so for me, I would say to those families and to somebody who has a family member who's doing that, ask them to explain that. Why is every other part of my body needs to be taken care of health-wise except my mind? And so I think that, you know, for anybody who does have family members like that, do what you can if you are able. So, you know, sometimes you're under you have a parent that says no therapy for you or whatever. Again, this is where the power in your story comes from. You know, at every high school, there's a counselor. And whatever your mom says or not, or your dad says or not, you have the right to go to that counselor because that is a resource for you. Maybe it's starting there. Maybe it's with a friend. Maybe it's with the aunt that you trust. Maybe it's a whatever. Sometimes it's just a conversation to get started. And having a conversation with the person who doesn't agree either. Being able to say that, you know, I'm hurting. I talk to you. I've talked to these people. I write. I do all this kind of stuff. I'm praying. I'm going to church. Nothing's happening. I need something more. Sometimes it's educating those people. Maybe you go online and find something that says, why is therapy good for you? Print it out, give it to them. You know, there's all these kind of different ways, but it all goes down to the willingness of you advocating for yourself. And this isn't just with therapy, it's with all things. Advocate for yourself. But there's something that you need. There should not be anything in this world that makes you feel that you aren't entitled to it and that you should not have it. And as long as you keep that in your mind, you know, I'm not trying to tell everybody to just be entitled all the time, but you better than anybody. And we have to stop making it seem like, mental health counselors and therapists and all these kind of things are bad things. If they weren't needed, why are we here? Why are they, why does it happen? So clearly there's some truth to it. So anybody who's in that situation, advocate for yourself and start small. It might be a small group of friends. Just start small. Start wherever that you can. I mean, Black women as a whole, from the beginning of time, we are a group that is supposed to work together. we're a group that live together, who raised our children together, who healed each other, who healed our communities. There's so much power when there's a group of women together. And I think that exists for our young women as well. So get your sister friends, get rid of the ones who aren't serving you, and you know, get together and y'all lift each other up.
Mm-hmm. I think I would have benefited from therapy as a teen. I'm not in therapy right now. That's something that I've considered. I will say that I have identified spaces that are therapeutic, right? And so part of my healing has been like building community. I go to these like meetup groups, other women, mothers, like through my church. I had a young adult one season, and then I just did a mothers, young moms group through my church, which feels like therapy because we legit just sit there and like pour into each other. People be crying. It don't even matter though. Like, I don't know these people, but they be knowing stuff about my life, right? And the conversation is way more productive than talking to my girlfriends. No shade to y'all. It's just way more productive than talking to my parents. You know, than talking to some of my closest peers. Way more productive and filling, which I don't think can be understated. And I think that that's kind of like what therapy is about, except it's a person who is skilled to help you resolve your stuff, and skilled to make sure you're not feeling judged, because you don't deserve to feel judged. You know, your parents don't have the right to judge you, even if they are your parents and brought you into this world. That is not their right. And so I think that is something that should be taken more seriously in our families and communities, and identified as a resource and solution, especially if there are the means. I also think that for communities where there is just simply not the means, that we need to make sure as a society that the resources are in place, right? And that's a whole nother thing. I want you to feel okay that if you're thinking about therapy, that you are not crazy. Actually, the people who don't go to therapy when they should are crazy. But I probably shouldn't even say that too, because they're not crazy. They just, in some ways, don't even understand the help that they need, right? So that's not crazy at all. That's human. That's human nature. We don't know what we don't know. So I take that back. You're not crazy. And you're not crazy for wanting to go. I think it's actually courageous for people to like do that, to be vulnerable enough to talk with someone about their stuff, to do the work to start to resolve their stuff. That is courageous and brave, and most people don't do that. Most people don't do that. That's why generational curses exist, girl. We don't do that. We'll talk about it with our aunties, or like talk about the issues, you know, maybe pray about it, which is one part of the puzzle. But hey, God also created doctors and therapists and community resources. Like, God created all of that, because practically he cannot, and as much as he's omniscient, like, and has power over all things, like, he exists through us, therapists, doctors, things like this. He's existing in this space, like, right? This is how he does his thing. This is how he does his thing. This is how she does God. Maybe she does the thing, right? Through us. So do it. And be okay with it. Like, and know that even you thinking about it, that's next level. The fact that you're even thinking about therapy, that is next level. Like, you grown. You ain't grown, but like, you're mature. That the fact that you're even thinking about it, so.
I would definitely recommend therapy. My daughter's 13, and she actually is about to start therapy. And she was a little uneasy about it, because she said that it would be like awkward talking to somebody that she didn't know. And I told her, like, that makes it even, a little more easier, because she does not know you. So she's not going to, she's not there to judge you or anything. She's there to help you. So it's like, just be transparent. And if you, just tell, I don't know, like, all I can say is just to be transparent and to do it for you, for you, and to just get everything you can out of it.
You have to get somebody that really truly has a passion with helping and healing you. And one thing I need people to know is that therapy does not equal medication. A lot of people say that they don't want to go to therapy because they feel like, oh, they're gonna give me medicine and drug me up. That's not even the case. And therapists is literally there to talk you through you and coach you through any underlying issues or problems that you're willing to do work for. And that's the key part, is that you have to be willing to do the work. Like I was when I was younger. I wasn't trying to do the work. I was just trying to get back to school. I'm just trying to keep it moving. Like, all right, whatever. You say it's going, it's messing with my attitude and I don't see nothing. I don't know what you're talking about, although moms know everything. So
Right.
yeah.
Tell them that. Yeah, right.
Moms,
The girl that don't want to listen to her mom,
please listen to
it.
your mom. Unless she's telling you to go out there and do something crazy like sell your body or something like that. Like, listen.
Final takeaway, girl. When I tell you, whatever space you're in right now, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're experiencing, whatever you're contemplating, however you may be doubting, however you may be hurting, resolving, it pales in comparison to what you will be. Like, legit. I promise you, like, literally whatever you like, wherever you're sitting right now, like wherever you're sitting and what's going through your mind, or that you're processing, what you're going through, contemplating, whereas it's very valid, it's so valid, it pales in comparison to like what you are going to experience soon, beyond your now. I just wish you would like see that. I think that's easier said than done, even as adults, right? Which is why I want to press and make sure that like you get like, I swear, like I promise. The girl who is throwing shade at you, the boy who is expressing interest in you in ways that are more physical, like just trying to get in your pants, quite frankly. Your like family members who like try to displace their drama on you when you don't, that's not what you need. Like the people who are telling you that you are a product of sort of dysfunction and will never go out, it pales. Like when I tell you like they're wrong, when I tell you that you are about to experience like next level, you ever had a moment where like everything was good until maybe it was Christmas, like one moment. I will hope you can think of like one moment. So maybe it was Christmas, maybe it was right after you accomplished something, even if it's small, like one moment where you just felt like, you know what, in this moment everything is right. Multiply that feeling you had by like infinity. That's pretty much how it's gonna be. Getting there might be tough, might be messy, ups and downs. But when I tell you like this current space pales in comparison to like what you will experience and evolve into, the end game. Focus on the end game. Focus on the end game. Never mind the minions, right? The people, the doubters, the critics, the haters. What I tell you? It pales. If you can keep your eye on that, your head in that, I swear, like the glow up is real. The glow up is real, but it's not gonna happen overnight. So even when you watch this tomorrow, it's not gonna be perfect. It might be better, hopefully. I hope it's better, just kind of like by us talking and kicking it. But even tomorrow doesn't pale. So you just gotta give it time and, focus on yourself. That's my love letter.